question was, how do they treat me? It depends.
Yes.
Some of them kind of scoff at it.
Yeah.
Others will listen. And what people need to realize is that psychic intuition and information transmitted from a spirit is certainly not admissible in court. It is the absolute epitome of hearsay evidence. And hearsay is an out-of-court statement offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted. Okay? So basically, you can't cross-examine a spirit or an intuitive piece of information, ergo, it's hearsay. But where it does come into play, Richard, is behind the scenes. Because what we can do is we can get images, information, things like I did, that can point the police and the investigators in the right direction. And then through that, they can obtain admissible evidence that doesn't necessarily include the psychic medium in the loop.
Now, don't you ever get affected, though, by all this heaviness, even though you're helping them? I guess you see that in the forte, though. But how do you protect yourself, per se?
Well, I think I differ a lot from a lot of the other people in the field in that I don't buy the whole evil spirit, possession, negativity thing. And look, there's, like your previous guest, and he's a great guy, and I totally respect him and his work. And I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm just saying that I belong to a different school of thought, okay? And because nobody knows for certain everything, because, we're just human beings temporarily living.
We know by our experience. We know exactly. Know by.
Right.
But what I mean, I'm not. It's evil what he did, no doubt. But I mean, how do you deal within the darkness that you're on these? It was hard for me, Mark, to deal with police cases before. It was too dark for me to deal with. How do you deal with that? Is what I'm saying.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, I've connected with a lot of people who've been murdered, and I've even connected with spirits of their killers who have been executed or have died. And it's the same approach I take as an attorney. My job is to maintain my objectivity and something of a professional aloofness. That being said, what we do as psychic mediums has a very emotional component to it, because it's a right-brained emotional activity, and it is difficult not to absorb some of the pain experienced by the victim, and certainly of the family that we're doing the readings for.
Yes.
So, but I have to realize that my job is to be open to the spirit communication and transmit as much information and data without getting my personal feelings involved. Be that as it may, it definitely wears you out. So you got to take a break afterwards and meditate and separate yourself from the angst and the anxiety. And I pace myself with how many readings I do within a week, because I notice, like, if I do several readings, let's say I do readings 5 to 6 days in a row, a couple times a day, I start to get mentally fatigued, and that's not good, because that can lead to being ill-tempered.
And get yourself sick. Get yourself sick.
Get yourself sick. Yeah, it's true. It's true. You will actually get physically sick, not because anything the spirit does from you, but because of a cellular and vibrational degeneration on a cellular level. Basically, it just depletes your energy, and you need to recharge yourself.
Too much stress, bottom line, and it affects your body.
Yes, absolutely.
And now I know you did a video once, I think, with Fox about telling about the hauntings that went on in the White House. Could you tell us about that?
Oh, yeah. It's one of the lectures that I give. It's called Rulers, Royals, Psychics, and Spirits. And a lot of people like to focus on the haunted White House. And it's really quite interesting because, we all know about Abraham Lincoln being assassinated at Ford's Theater. And, gosh, I have to go on a little detour real quick.
It's okay.
Well,
It's okay.
I went to Ford's Theater a few years ago. Okay.
Okay.
And,
What did you feel when you were there? I know we're going way off, but
yeah. Well, here's what I was really surprised by, Richard. Ford's Theater is still a theater. I mean, people are buying tickets to go. They show movies and they do plays there. I mean, I thought it would be like some kind of shrine, like, oh my God, And actually, the house that Abraham Lincoln died in was across the street. So he was shot, and they took him to, which would have been like a real ritzy house at the time. He was in the theater district, and I stood in the room where Abraham Lincoln died, and all I felt was sadness. But the thing is, I mean, how many people have visited there since Lincoln has died? So I didn't feel his spirit lingering around, because you've probably had 1 million people at least go through this house in the past 150 years or so. But the weird thing, though, when I was at Ford's Theater, I was walking around, and I was like, okay, come on, Abraham Lincoln, come to me. And all of a sudden, I felt all these men, about a dozen men, falling and crashing to their deaths. And I saw like a platform or a plank giving way, and I was like freaking out. And I go, oh my God, And so my manager, she travels with me, and she saw this, and then one of the managers walked up and go, what's going on here? And she goes, oh, he's a psychic medium. And I told him what I felt. He goes, yeah, that's real interesting. I go, why? He goes, well, he said, back in 1902, whoever was owned the theater at the time was doing renovations, and a scaffolding broke, and about a dozen of the workers fell to their death. And so what I was picking up on had absolutely nothing to do with Abraham Lincoln, but it had to do with the 12 or so workers who died when the scaffolding they were working on broke.
And then you had the proof to show them how that was true. I mean, you.
Well, yeah, because they don't have a plaque or anything anywhere that says, scaffold broke here. I mean, and with all due respect to these guys and their families, they weren't famous, and so unfortunately they weren't commemorated. Plus, I didn't know. The only thing I knew about Ford's Theater was that Abraham Lincoln, had been assassinated there. So I found that to be extremely interesting to experience that phenomenon. And then last summer I was in Dallas, and I went to the book depository or repository, and then I walked to the grassy knoll, and I actually met a gentleman who was he was like 11 years old,
right?
And he was an eyewitness to JFK's assassination.
Oh, he was 11 years old at the time, you mean? Okay.
He was 11 years old at the time.
Okay.
And it was such a trip getting to meet him. And when I was standing on the grassy knoll and looking at everything, if people think Lee Harvey Oswald did this on his own, let alone the angle of where JFK got hit, the book depository is a good 500-600 feet from the grassy knoll. So why would Lee Harvey Oswald wait until Kennedy's car, motorcade, which went right in front of the book depository, wouldn't he have shot him at point-blank range when he was there instead of waiting till he went another 600 feet on an awkward angle? It just doesn't, when you're there and you see everything, it just doesn't add up. So it is fascinating going to such incredibly historical places, and to think that I stood on the very spot where both Abraham Lincoln and then later John F. Kennedy had died was really quite a fascinating experience.
Well,
one more.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. Well, I was at the tower. I know that you like paranormal stories. I got a good one here. This one's great.
Okay,
All right,
okay.
So,
Fine, you're fine,
so
you're fine.
I'm at the Tower of London in England, and it was cool because I was getting ready to go to the Arthur Findlay College in a couple days. But I got over to England a few days early because, it's like a 5-hour time difference from where I live in Florida, and I wanted to get adjusted. I don't want to go in and start doing, heavy-duty mediumship, when I'm jet lagged out. So I thought, what the heck, I'll go to the Tower of London, and it's creepy and cool and medieval, and it's got, the whole thing going on. And so I'm walking around, and I start thinking about Henry VIII and Anne Boleyn. Okay, the famous Anne Boleyn, the one that, Henry had to get a divorce from Catherine of Aragon, and it turned, the Catholic Church in England at odds. And I was walking around and I go, God, I wonder where Anne Boleyn was beheaded. And so I sat down on this bench, and I'm looking around.
Oh, no.
It was a really cold day, and all of a sudden I get this tingly, chilly, kind of freaky feeling, and I looked over to the left of me, and there's this little glass sign, and it says, "Here be the site Queen Anne Boleyn was beheaded by order of Henry VIII." And I'm like, OMG. I mean, I'm wondering, where did she die? And I realize I'm sitting on the spot.
You were directed just right to that one spot. I tell you, it's now things like that, when that occur, when that occurs to me, I still get surprised. I get awed, and that's what makes what we do so special within our heart, don't you think?
It really does, because in that particular instant, if you and I were called to a place and they said there was a murder here, now what do you get? All right, we know, that we're looking for clues, but when it just happens to us,
mm-hmm.
and we're not looking for it, that to me, it really does, Richard. It makes it all so special. I also think that it underscores the authenticity of it. For someone to bring me to Ford's Theater and say, "What do you get here?" It's like, well, gee,
let me see.
Yeah, but if all of a sudden I pick up on 12 people dying that are 40 years after Lincoln, that's interesting. So you have to look at it like that. There's been. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, but we get called to things that people don't understand, and what we don't understand at times, so that it could be healed, I believe, so that it could come to a resolve.
I think so. The reason that people come to psychic mediums, for the most part, is to establish communication with a loved one. And
confirmation.
Yeah, confirmation. People want proof and a guarantee as best as can be provided that life is everlasting and that the person that meant so much to them didn't just disintegrate. And so we do that through evidence, because as well as I, anyone could say, "Oh, who died? Oh, yeah, your son. Oh, well, your son's here and he loves you." Okay. Well, anybody could say that.
Yeah.
But when a spirit starts transmitting pieces of evidence,
yes,
facts, verifiable facts that there's no way I could possibly know, or that you could possibly know, then this is a huge component of evidential mediumship. In other words, we have to produce evidence transmitted to us from a spirit to verify the identity of the spirit and the authenticity of the contact.
And it comes to us in so many different forms that we have to be detectives in some ways.
Oh, we do. I mean, sometimes we've got to help put things together, and it helps if the person that we're reading is open-minded.
Yes, very much. Yes, yeah. Those cynical people, they're the tough ones.
Well, yeah, you get them, and they sit there with their arms folded, and no matter what you say, no, and they start shooting everything down. And people have to realize that things that come through may not be immediately recognizable.